Hello and welcome to AircraftGrade, the podcast all about commercial aviation. I'm your host Alex, and coming up this week, the Airbus A320 marks 34 years of flying, how the aerospace line Super Guppy transformed aviation and how you can own a piece of it, British Airways' Baby Bus reaches its expiration date, and Dublin Airport expansion plans cause controversy. Before we take a deep dive into our main topics, let's first round up the key aviation stories from the last week, giving you my opinion along the way. De Havilland have announced they are temporarily stopping production of their Dash 8 turboprop aircraft and will vacate their Downsview production site in the second half of this year. This isn't overly surprising to me considering how densely populated the market for second-hand turboprops is at the moment. Lufthansa have finished painting one of their Airbus A320-300s in Dublin. This seems strange in my opinion, considering many airlines have retired their quad-jet fleets. However, this does show Lufthansa's commitment to the type. Their longer A340-600s don't appear to have been so lucky, and I can either see them being retired completely or facing a long stay in storage in Teruel, Spain. A United Airlines passenger has finally been fined $50,000 and faces 5 years of probation after they threatened to kill a flight attendant on a flight in February 2020, causing the aircraft to divert. I think this punishment is perfectly fair and sets the precedent that this kind of behaviour shouldn't be tolerated. Russian plane manufacturer Ilyushin has revealed its latest development of their IL-96 quad-jet widebody. The IL-96-400M is expected to boost the plane's capabilities, leaving it with a capacity of around 370 passengers. Despite this apparent upgrade, the plane is getting worse in my opinion. The Dash 400M will require a 3-person cockpit, one more than before. Currently, there haven't been any firm orders from any airlines. On the day this podcast is released, it will be 34 years since the highest selling airliner took its first flight. The plane in question, the Airbus A320. You may be thinking, but Alex, 34 years isn't really a significant anniversary, so why are you talking about the A320 now? Well, a couple of reasons. I briefly mentioned in previous episodes how important I think the A320 will be to the industry in helping it recover from the pandemic, and I also think it'll make an interesting episode. So, let's get into it. The Airbus A320 project dates back to 1977, where European aerospace companies were evaluating successors for the successful BAC 111, Boeing 737-200 and Douglas DC-9. This led to the creation of the Joint European Transport or JET programme, which was separate from the Airbus consortium but involved the same companies as Airbus, so not confusing at all. The programme developed designs and blueprints for the 130 to 188 seat market, which would be powered by CFM56 engines and crew slightly higher than the 737 at the time of Mach 0.84. 3 years later, in 1980, the JET project was passed on to Airbus and aided their studies into a single-aisle passenger jet. The programme produced 3 variants of the single-aisle design, and they were called the SA-1, SA-2 and SA-3. These would later become the A319, A320 and A321. In February 1981, Airbus gave the jet its final name and designated it the A320. The A320 was chosen to be based off the SA-2 designs, which could carry 150 passengers and fly 3,440 kilometres from wing fuel tanks only. However, soon after the original A320 was released, the A320-100, an A320-200 was developed, which offered an additional centre fuel tank that increased the jet's range to 5,700 kilometres. Wingtip fences were also added. The Airbus A320 programme was officially launched to the public on the 2nd of March 1984, at which point the manufacturer had 96 orders. Air France was a launch customer with 25 A320 orders and options for 25 more. British Caledonian had also placed 7 firm orders. Cyprus Airways ordered jets in November 1984. Pan Am had also had 16 firm orders and 34 further options. Upon launch, the Airbus A320 was only available with CFM56 engines, but was later also offered with IAE V2500 engines from a consortium of Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, Japanese Aero Corporation, Fiat and MTU. The first A320 was completed in February 1987, with of course its maiden flight 34 years ago today, on the 22nd of February 1987. with a flight time of 3 hours 23 minutes. The first aircraft was then delivered just over a year later, on March 28, 1988, to Air France. The Airbus A320 was revolutionary in many ways, but primarily because Airbus introduced a revolutionary computer-controlled fly-by-wire system. Instead of flight controls being manipulated with a series of cables and pulleys, the A320's flight control stick's analog input is converted to a digital signal to control a computer which links the flight control surfaces. This system was previously only reserved for high-performance aircraft like fighter jets. The fly-by-wire system enhanced safety, improved aircraft handling, reduced weight, and increased the commonality between different aircraft. This meant that no matter the size or the weight of the aircraft, the pilots would not have to adapt how they fly, resulting in a reduction in pilot training costs. Another feature that came with fly-by-wire was a system called envelope protection, which would not allow the aircraft to fly beyond its performance capabilities. Truly a game changer. The A320 also featured a revolutionary glass cockpit, which saw computer screens replace many analog instruments, changing the way pilots interact with their aircraft. Since its launch, the Airbus A320 has seen many derivatives and versions be produced. Today we take a brief overview of these enhancements, as well as giving you my view on the future of the A320. The first derivative of the A320 was the Airbus A321, which was based off the original SA3 designs, seating 185 to 236 passengers. The A321 was launched soon after the 320 in November 1988, entering service in 1994, after commitments from 10 customers for 183 planes. The A321 was designed to have very minimal changes from the original A320, with only minor modifications to the wings and fuselage. The fuselage was extended by 6.94 metres, and the fuselage and undercarriage were also reinforced. The aircraft first flew on the 11th of March 1993 and was delivered to launch customer Lufthansa in January 1994. Like the original A320, the A321 came in two variants, the Dash 100 and the Dash 200. In my eyes, the Dash 100 was ultimately a flawed aircraft, as it had a shorter range than the A320, since no extra fuel tank was added to the initial design to compensate for the extra weight, leading to a range of about 4,352 kilometres. Having said this, only around 90 were produced. Airbus quickly released the Dash 200 in 1995, which had the installation of one or two optional fuel tanks in the rear hold, increasing range to 5,600 kilometres, first flying with Monarch in April 1997. After the stretch of the A321, Airbus then shrank the A320 twice in the form of the A319 and A318. The A319's origins can be found in the 130 to 140 seat SA1 from the original single-aisle studies. The SA1 was actually the only design from the original studies that had been previously dismissed. However, after the A320 and A321 had good sales, Airbus decided to relaunch the SA1 or A319 project to compete with the 737-300 or 737-700. The shrunk airframe reduced the length of the jet by 3.73 metres, reducing the number of overwing exits from 4 to 2. However, high-density cabins, as seen in EasyJet's A319s, still require 4 overwing exits. The bulk cargo door was replaced by a smaller aft cargo door, and some minor software changes were made due to the different handling characteristics. Since the A319 had roughly the same fuel capacity as the A320-200 and fewer passengers, it had an impressive range of 6,650 kilometres or 6,850 kilometres with Airbus's Sharklets. Swissair took the first A319 in April 1996. The final major Airbus A320 derivative was the tiny A318. The A318 was Airbus's smallest aircraft at the time and was shorter than the A320 by over 6 metres. This reduced capacity to 107 to 132 passengers with a maximum range of 5,700 kilometres. The idea came from a study between Aviation Industries of China, Singapore Technologies Aerospace, Alina and Airbus for a 95 to 125 seat aircraft. The A318 is powered by both CFM56s and Pratt & Whitney PW6000s. This turns out to be one of its downfalls. When Pratt & Whitney discovered the PW6000 burned more fuel than expected, many cancelled their orders, reducing the total number of orders significantly, leaving Airbus with only 80. The aircraft launched with Frontier Airlines in July 2003. Interestingly, in March 2006, EASA certified modifications to the A318, which allowed the aircraft to perform steep approaches. The software modifications modified control laws and automatically deployed spoilers for more drag, and provided different oral alerts to the crew. This allowed the A318 to perform 5.5 degree approaches versus the usual 3 degree approaches, something BA took advantage of on their London City to JFK routes via Shannon. More on that later. Nowadays though, Airbus's A319, A320 and A321 all have a NEO option. NEO stands for New Engine Option and was launched in December 2010. The Airbus NEO jets offer new engine options, it's kind of in the name, of CFM LEAP 1As and Pratt & Whitney PW1000G engines, as well as large sharklets. These models are roughly 15% more efficient than the standard A320 series of aircraft. The A319neo introduced a slightly better range than the standard jet, but also introduced an Airbus Corporate Jet, or ACJ version of the A319neo. This allowed customers to fly 8 passengers over 12,500 kilometres. The A319neo hasn't been overly successful since its first flight in March 2017, with only 78 orders, likely due to its crossover with the A220-300. The A320neo launched with Lufthansa in January 2016, with airlines reporting 15% fuel efficiency improvements. The A320neo also had a boosted range by about 1,000 kilometres. The A321neo is where things start to get interesting. The original 321neo was delivered to Virgin America in May 2017. The A321neo has a range of about 6,500 kilometres, or roughly 1,000 kilometres more than the standard A321. It's been widely successful so far, with over 3,400 orders. However, since its original release, Airbus have improved the A320neo with new options. The A321LR was the first derivative, with 3 auxiliary fuel tanks with a range of roughly 1,000 kilometres further than the standard A321neo, to a range of about 7,400 kilometres. Airlines like Aer Lingus and TAP really enjoy their aircraft. Airbus further extended the range of the A321LR with the A321XLR. Yes, I also think these names are confusing. The A321XLR is expected to fly 8,700 kilometres and will be in service by 2022. Airbus have said the A321XLR will have the same wings and engines as the A321LR, but with increased fuel capacity and strengthened landing gear. Now, that's a lot of LRs and XLRs, so hopefully that makes sense. In recent years, Airbus have ignited a programme first imagined in 2008, which converts A320s and 21s into freighter aircraft. In June 2015, ST Aerospace signed agreements with Airbus and conversion firm Elm Flugs Verka GmbH to launch an A320 and A321 passenger to freighter programme. Qantas was announced as the launch operator, with them due to receive 3 A321 P2Fs, with the first introduced in October last year, 2020. Titan Airlines also received their first in January this year, 2021, and these aircraft will enter the market perfectly as a replacement for older 757 converted freighters. Airbus is clearly committed to the A320neo series of aircraft, even recently announcing new airspace cabins for their narrow-body offering. But should they? Well, I think so. I've said before, the Boeing 737 MAX was ultimately flawed because it was based off a design from the 1960s. Well, the A320 isn't anywhere near as old as its design of the 737. It's a competitive and efficient plane, while only being a second-generation airframe. There were talks of a clean sheet design replacement back in 2006, but those plans seem to have been dropped. This makes a lot of sense in my opinion. The A320 still has plenty of life left in it. Well, that's my opinion at least. For the next few years, the A320 will be a very powerful airliner for airlines. Its relatively long-range capabilities and unbeatable fuel efficiency, well, at least that's what the marketing team say, makes the plane perfect for airlines to use on long and skinny routes. That is, routes that are relatively long range, but don't quite have enough demand to fill a wide body. Something we'll see often in a recovering industry. The A320 is one of my favourite planes to fly in both simulators and as a passenger in real life, and it's still got a lot of life left in it. Airbus manufacture their aircraft in different plants around Western Europe. For example, Airbus's main final assembly line is in Toulouse, France. However, wings are manufactured in Broughton, Wales. So in order to transport the wings and other aircraft components to their different factories, they field a fleet of Beluga transport planes based on a standard A300. Recently, Airbus have upgraded their Beluga fleet with the Beluga XL aircraft, based off of an A330 with similar modifications. However, before Airbus built the jet-powered Beluga aircraft, they used a fleet of propeller planes called the Super Guppies by Aerospace Lines, based on the Boeing 377 Stratocruiser. The aircraft was used to fly parts from the Concorde and other Airbus aircraft to Toulouse, the aforementioned final assembly line. This led to a joke that every Airbus was born on a Boeing, given the fact that the Super Guppy was based on a Boeing. NASA also used the Super Guppy to transport the third stage of the Saturn V rocket. However, by September 1994, Airbus had already replaced the Super Guppy with Belugas. These incredibly rare aircraft have since been scrapped or kept in museums. However, recently, Aviation Tag, a company that creates keyrings made from fuselage pieces of aircraft, have announced they have secured parts of the fuselage from Foxtrot Bravo Tango Golf Victor, the first Super Guppy ever made, first flying in August 1970. Aviation Tag are well known for securing parts of rare or historic aircraft. For example, they sold parts of the first A380 to be retired. I think this is super exciting considering the Super Guppy is so unique and rich in history. The tags are currently up for pre-order from the official Aviation Tag store and many other online retailers. A unique aspect is customers won't know whether they'll receive a silver, blue, orange or red tag since the manufacturer doesn't know how many keyrings of each colour they'll get, adding to the surprise. I've pre-ordered mine, will you be getting one? Well, let me know. And perhaps I'll do a segment on special cargo aircraft in the future. Let's briefly go back to British Airways London City to JFK via Shannon routes. Before the pandemic, BA used to operate an Airbus A318 on a unique all-business class route from the heart of London to JFK, under the flight number BA1, the flight number once used by Concorde. However, in late March, BA quickly suspended this service and sent their sole A318, Golf Echo Uniform November Alpha, to storage in Madrid. Then, in July, International Airlines Group, the owner of British Airways, sadly announced they would retire the Airbus A318, cancelling the City to JFK route indefinitely. On Wednesday, the aircraft seemed to meet its permanent match. It flew from Madrid to Twente Airport, an airport infamous for being the home of Aircraft End-of-Life Solutions, who dismantle aircraft. The aircraft took a strange route over the northwest and Bay of Biscay, although the reason for this decision is unknown. Before its retirement, Golf Echo Uniform November Alpha clocked a total of 38,075 flight hours, a truly impressive feat. The City Shannon JFK route was special in many ways. The plane was in an all-business class configuration and passengers could pre-clear US customs in Ireland. I would love to see the route relaunched in the future with an A220. I think it would be very successful. The Dublin Airport Authority have released a proposal to extend nighttime operations, boosting the number of arriving and departing flights the airport can handle. The curfew extension is underpinned by the €320 million runway currently under construction. Before the pandemic, Dublin Airport was experiencing consistent growth and handled roughly 80% of all arrivals into Ireland, so extended operating hours makes sense. The proposed changes are twofold. The first is to remove the cap on the number of flights allowed between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. daily, due to come into effect in 2022. The airport are planning to replace these restrictions with an annual nighttime noise quota between the hours of 1 p.m. and 6 a.m. The second proposed change is to allow flights to arrive and depart on the new north runway between 11 p.m. and midnight and 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. The proposal has gained a lot of traction, with airlines like Aer Lingus and Ryanair showing immense support. However, predictably, not everyone agrees with the plans. Green Party Government Minister Roderick O'Gorman has stated that the relaxation of the curfew and the restrictions of aircraft movements threatens the peace and quiet of nearby residents. He says, as things currently stand, the opening of the north runway in conjunction with the restrictions which were made a condition of the planning permission for that runway would result in a reduction in noise levels experienced by many people. And if Dublin Airport's proposal is approved, he says the level of noise that they will be experiencing will remain the same, and they will experience new night noise. This is unacceptable. Well, essentially, he's not very happy, and he thinks the residents will experience new noise, which is understandable. As it stands, as of recording, Dublin Airport's proposal has been sent to the ANCA, the Aircraft Noise Competent Authority, who will review the proposal, consult the public, and consider any feedback. After these steps have been taken, the airport will receive its final decision, although a date for this has not been set. Now it's time to cover the most important airplane orders and deliveries over the last week. Southwest Airlines and Copper Airlines have taken delivery of 737 MAXs, the former a MAX 8 and the latter a MAX 9. Air Belgium have received their second A320F from Qatar Airways. They're still awaiting the final two, leased from CMA, CGM, Air Cargo. S7 Airlines have received their first 737 freighter, and AMK Aircraft Limited have taken delivery of a 737-8 corporate jet. TUI, Maxair and Hisavia have received standard 737s. NEOS have got a brand new Dreamliner, and Indigo, Air Côte d'Ivoire and ANA have all received A320neo family of aircraft. That's all we've got time for today. Thank you for listening to the AircraftGrade podcast. If you did enjoy it, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or your favourite podcast player. If you do have any feedback, you can tweet us at AircraftGrade or DM us on Instagram. aircraftgrade.co.uk, our website is now live, so make sure to check that out. I've been Alex, have a decently average week, goodbye.